Welcome to Maximal Being,
a podcast devoted to ditching fad diets and using real science to get you healthy and feeling great.
I'm Doc Mock, a GI and functional medicine doctor who harnesses the power of gut health to get you achieving your goals.
And I'm Jacky P, a well-informed layman who challenges the experts and asks the questions that you want.
Don't forget to hit the subscribe button or leave a comment.
And now, on to the show. Hello, Maximal Beings. It is I, Jacky P, your favorite, I'm air quoting right now if you're listening, layman, because today I may not be so much as a layman. But before we get into that, Doc Mock, how are you today? I love seeing your smile, Doc.
I love your smile too. I mean,
thank you.
It like reflects each other. The good vibes flow in both ways. I'm excited. Like you alluded to, this may be the episode where I'm the layman. So I actually brought my very own layman card there. For those of you that are listening at home, I actually held up a card. So I'm going to throw the flag on the field if you guys, these two geniuses here, get a little too jargony, and I cannot wait for this discussion. For those of you listening for the first time, I'm Doc Mock. I'm a therapeutic endoscopist, fancy type of GI doctor that removes and treats cancer. And I'm also a functional medicine doctor. So looking at things from both sides of the field. Back to you, Jacky P.
Thank you. And with us today, I have to be honest. I've been looking forward to this since the day we booked it. Wendy, she said it before we started, but I believe it's true. Queen of everything.
Yep.
Right. Wendy Petties. Right. I mean, just Wendy, how are you today? I can't even talk. I'm so excited. How are you, Wendy?
I'm great. I'm excited to be here. I am just thrilled to learn more about you guys and to share what I know about the connection between money and pleasure and health and wealth and all that stuff.
Yeah. And some people are thinking, whoa, money, pleasure, wealth, health, aren't these 4 completely different categories? No, right? And that's what we're going to get into. And no, I'm just saying short no, but we're going to get into it.
Paleo, keto, vegan, and carnivore. Maybe you've tried them all, but did you have success? Are you still doing that diet? Turns out there's not just one diet right for one particular person. By understanding how your body works and the relationship behind your body's workings and these diets, you can then approach the perfect plan for you. In the Perfect Human Diet course, we talk to you about your body's inner workings and the pros and cons of each plan. We discuss how our ancestors ate and have eaten and lay a framework to tailoring a plan that is perfect for you. To learn more about the Perfect Human Diet course, head to maximalbeing.com/courses to find out more. And as always, I'm Doc Mock, and I'm here to maximize your health. You cannot supplement your way to health, but there are things that we need to add to our lives that can maximize our pathway to wellness. The American diet is virtually devoid of omega-3 fatty acids, which play a major role in cardiovascular disease, gut permeability, and mental health. Personally, I take omega-3s every night, and iHerb is the best place for clean, natural sources of supplements. I love the ZenWise omega-3 fatty acid supplement, which is free of fish burps and good for the environment. Head on over to maximalbeing.com/iHerb, that's IHERB, and enter the code B as in boy, D as in dog, B as in boy, 5528 and receive 10% off your orders for all supplements. Maximize your supplements with iHerb.
Everyone, we always start this the same. Wendy, if you can give us what we like to call your origin story, right? You shared with me before, but I'd like to share it again. How did you become Wendy, the queen of everything?
Well, queen of everything.
All hail the queen.
Yes, all hail the queen. Well, that's Queen Latifah. There's all kinds of queens, but
that's true.
And I come from Queens. I come from Queens, New York, so that is part of my origin story. But I think I got started in this work Parts of it got started when I was really little. I have always been outspoken. I always asked questions. And so I was always curious about things. I am a psychologist, I am an MBA, and I am a sex educator. And all of those things have played into my work in trying to help people to understand the connection between these things. I believe that if you can afford things, you can have everything that you want. And if you can't, there are ways to get there, but we got to get through shame. We got to get through guilt. And so that's really kind of how it started. Little bits of my story will come out as we talk through this, but that's the basis of it. It was my curiosity. It was my wonder about how to figure out how to get better at some things that had happened in my life. My tagline is, I went from bankruptcy to being worth $1.3 million by using pleasure.
Wow. Wow. And so everyone is there's like a calm came over the crowd, right? What an impact. So let's talk about it, right? Because I know, we'll go with the low hanging fruit, right? Pleasure, right? Everyone is, I'd say, afraid of that word in different ways, right? Or sometimes everyone thinks of that word in different ways.
Yeah.
So can you walk us through how you can help the people you work with, right? And of course, everyone is in a different place, but how do you help focus pleasure and help like people come around to saying, okay, you know what, pleasure is okay, and I can use pleasure to, move forward in life in a lot of different aspects?
Yeah. So when people usually hear pleasure, they think sexual pleasure. And that's only part of it. What I'm talking about is feeling good enough to do something about it. It's kind of like a confidence booster to do something about whatever it is that you want to do. We cannot make change unless we feel good. I have a chronic illness. I am disabled. And so sometimes physically I don't feel well, but I know how to fuse myself and fuel myself to feel good enough to get the things done that I need to get done, to do the things that I want. And so when I think about pleasure, it's about finding things that make you feel good. So if we can just get it as basic as that, then people understand it. And then maybe they won't be so shy or titillated by the conversation to miss the whole point,
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And of course, share as much as you like, but I especially like the climb, right? You said you went from bankruptcy to now being a millionaire, right?
Yeah.
These two wide spectrums. Would you say there was a point or multiple points where it was like, oh, aha, this is like what I have to do, or this is like, was there a moment in time where you felt like there was a catalyst or a change, or was it multiple steps?
I think it was multiple steps. I mean, my story in short is that I worked on Wall Street before I worked on Wall Street, I was known as the condom negotiator.
Wow.
Yes.
Intriguing.
Intriguing.
Yeah.
I was hired by a national nonprofit to go out to communities of color. It was the height of the HIV and AIDS. And I was hired to go out and help women to negotiate condom usage with their men to save their lives.
Wow.
And so I was trained and I was taught how to do this and really taught about anatomy and sexual pleasure and all these sexual things to try and let people know that, hey, you can have great sex with condoms. And when I got out there, they were not interested in hearing that from my 20-year-old self, first of all. And so I was concerned and confused, even at that time, that they would miss the boat and miss the opportunity to save their lives. And so I began I was in school to get my master's, and I got a psychology degree on top of it because I wanted to understand the disconnect between something that could really help you and not doing it. And so that's how I kind of got started in the sexuality work and the pleasure work. But I needed to make some money. So I went and worked on Wall Street, made a whole bunch of money. but I hated the job, but I did it. You talk about two ends of the spectrum, I made a whole bunch of money, but I didn't like doing it. So I did it to make the money. We can compartmentalize. I left and went and had my dream job at an airline. It was amazing, but I was not making any money. So then we had that pull. We had, oh my God, this is amazing, but I can't really pay my bills here, And so I had learned to compartmentalize myself, much like those women earlier on, much like those women. And so throughout that entire time working on Wall Street, working for the airline, I was ill physically. That's where the health stuff comes on. I was ill physically. And I had amassed $310,000 in medical debt.
Wow.
And when my time at the airline came to an end by being harassed, I left and I mean, like morally, I felt emotionally, financially, and physically bankrupt, just really down. And I filed bankruptcy. And I was down for a while, mental health. I was on antidepressants. And I just decided, I didn't just decide. What I did was go back to my roots. I went back to that training, that pleasure training. And I said, let me do something little. Let me, instead of laying in this bed for 4 months, on day 4 months and 1 day, let me put my feet on the ground and put them into my soft slippers, because that can make me feel good. Then maybe a little later, I could actually stand up and smell myself and say, let me get in the shower and take a shower with some soap that smells good. Then I could, find a glass to drink out of that was really beautiful. Not just the red cup that was sitting on there forever and you just kind of rinsed it out, but a glass, a beautiful glass. And that's how I started building myself up. And once I could get that confidence and fill myself back up, then I was like, okay, Wendy, let's do something different. And so I started building my business, and I vowed I'd never work for anyone else again because I was traumatized and I knew that. So this is not about masking things or covering things up. This is about finding the energy and finding the confidence and the wherewithal to keep going, because I knew I didn't want to stay there, but I didn't know how to get out. So I had to find things that made me feel good so that I could keep going. And that's really how it went. I filed bankruptcy. I filed Chapter 13, so I had to pay it back. It wasn't a clean slate. And so I had to pay the money back. And so I just little by little started filling myself up first. A lot of people do dessert afterwards. I believe in let's fill ourselves up first so that we have the energy to do it. Because I might be full by the time I get to dessert.
Yep.
And so that's what I have put in place. And that's what I help my clients do, to figure out first, where are you really? Because I had so much guilt, so much shame. People don't talk about these things. I was an MBA and I filed bankruptcy, what does that mean about me, who I am? I worked for this amazing airline that everybody knows and loves. And that was such a part of my psyche also, and my identity. So I had a lot of stuff to go through, but that's really how I did it. I started filling myself up with things that feel good, the pleasure piece, and my health is great. My money is great. And it's a practice that you have to keep practicing at, but that's really how it happened.
That's incredible. One, thank you for sharing that with us. And
yes, thank you.
I think it really speaks to, one thing that Doc Mock and I always like having people on our show who walk the walk, right? There's the astronomer who can tell you everything about the space, and then there's a guy who just came down in the shuttle, right? So, thank you for sharing that with us. But I also like how you said it was like one step at a time. A lot of folks, I know a ton about you, right? And a lot of people read about you, right? You're extremely Googleable, right?
Yes.
Which is a great thing. And sometimes folks don't understand that, like, there is a long journey that you have to go through to get to where you are, right? And sometimes folks who are in similar situations where, you use those terms, right? Guilt, shame, about either their medical, physical situation or the financial situation, or sometimes if you're all three, right, it's you're lost in the woods and you don't know where to go, right? And it was just like a step by step. If you could put your one foot in front of you, that's what you focus on. And, you know, I'd like to kind of take that and talk a little bit about how crippling sometimes that guilt and shame can be with folks, where it almost scares them into doing nothing almost. Right?
Absolutely. More often than not. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So what would you say is, you know, let's say someone is listening for the first time and they may not be in such of a serious situation, but maybe they're just in a situation where the money isn't right, right? They don't know what to do, and they feel a certain way about it, right? Like, what are some things, some tools you've helped put in front of some of your clients to help them, you know, just kind of shake off that first layer of, okay, let's get out of frozen mode and let's get into finding that first step?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to understand that some of this is in our control, and we caused some of this, you know, the good stuff and the not so good stuff. Like we're, you know, like recognize that all the things that make me amazing, I did, just like all the things that got me in a whole bunch of trouble, I did too. You know what I mean? Like, let's just put it in perspective. You are not just the sum of all the crap that you think you caused, you know, any more than you can just be like, no, that's me, I'm amazing, you know? And so let's just put it in perspective that it is what it is. First of all, it's what I call the clarity stage. Like, let's really talk about like what is true, what happened, what choices did I make, what choices did I not have, like kind of getting through that. And then understanding that we just weren't taught. You know, you talk about food and health. Like I amassed all that debt because I put my trust in blindly in doctors, some who I absolutely love and are grateful for, and who cried when I said no more testing. They said, oh my God, I was on a roll trying to save you and trying to help you, and I forgot to connect with you. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. And others who sent me to their private hospital that was out of network because they didn't give a damn. Do you know what I mean? So I gotta call that in. But I wasn't taught, you know? So there's things that we weren't taught. There's things that we need to learn. Just information we need to learn. There's things that we were taught that is crap. It's just not true. It's just not helpful. But we were taught that either directly or indirectly. You know, we got things from our parents, our friends, whatever, and we believe it to be so, but we need to kind of say that that's not really true. And then there's things we need to question, you know, like things that we may think are true, but we need to question for ourselves and see if it really fits into what we think and what we want to do and our plan for ourselves. So I think stripping away those kind of things so that you're like, I'm just like you, you're just like me. And so I may not have made that mistake, but let me tell you about the 20 things that I did, you know, or the one thing that someone taught me that I want to pass on to you. Like, let's find those kind of things so that we're not stuck in this, like, I am this because this has happened, for good or bad. You know, like I don't allow any boasting and bragging for evil. I allow boasting and bragging, but not for evil. Like, you're not better than me or you or whatever because you have done something, any more than you're worse than me or less than me because any more than you've done or not done something. So I just kind of normalize this. Okay, you know, now we can figure out what to do.
Yeah, leveling the playing field so we can all just approach a good open conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, you know, I forgot: pleasure, money, health,
and wealth.
Yeah. Right.
What's going on, Maximal Beings? It's Doc Mock here. Many of you are returning to the gym now, but some are not going back. Regardless of what you plan, Rogue has got the right gear to fit your needs. I personally own a barbell set and love it. The Black Ops shorts are sweat resistant and flexible for getting deep in your squats. Head on over to maximalbeing.com/rogue for our referral link. Order 3 items and they ship for free. And as usual, It's Doc Mock, and I'm here to maximize your pathway to wellness. If you're stuck at home and cannot make it to the grocery store, delivery may be the best way to stay clean and healthy. Instacart is the national leader in the direct-to-home delivery service. With numerous major chains and food from smaller stores, you can get those local veggies sent directly to your doorstep. Head on over to maximalbeing.com/Instacart and maximize your nutrition today.
Let's talk about, you have something, you have, date your money,
Yes.
right? Date your money philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
right? So can you unpack that and kind of walk us through that for folks who've never heard of that or haven't had a chance to check you out? What does it mean to date your money?
Yeah, it means show it the respect and the connection and the effort that you would show to any relationship, including the relationship with yourself. And much like money, we're not taught how to interact with people in intimate relationships either. So, I take people through a journey of, are you even ready for a relationship with your money? And it's a metaphor, but it's really like, have you cleaned up your stuff?
Yeah.
No, I want to date this 6-foot football player who's making $20 million, but I'm still living in my mother's house on her couch and eating cat food. Like we have to kind of, are you ready to do the work kind of thing?
Sure.
And then we move to, okay, so now I'm understanding and I'm ready. Then we move through a process. It's a 5-part process, but we move to bliss, which is, let's actually have a date and the relationship that I really want with my money. Let's plan out how that's going to be. People get nervous about the word budget, for example. But you have to check in with your money, just like you have to check in and nurture your relationships. And so, there are things you need to do every day. I have daily quickies, which are, check your accounts. Just look at the numbers. Just look at the numbers. That's something you got to do every day. Much like in a relationship, there are things you have to do every day, Then there's things you do weekly. It's a weekly date. So check in a little deeper and dive in and see what went out and what went in and catch that subscription that you forgot to cancel, those kind of things. Make sure that, you have food in the house, I just keep attributing it and keep connecting it to how you progress through a relationship. And it's the same thing with your money. And so that's really what it's about. And I got the idea because people do think it's separate. They're like, oh no, I got my relationship together, but my money's funny. And I'm like, I think everything's funny then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's, and it's an easier way. It's a more palatable way to talk about things, so that's what Date Your Money is.
Date Your Money. I like that. And what are some, what would you say are some common, you mentioned them before, but what are some things that if you were to boil down, all the folks you've spoken with and worked with over your career, what are like some of those common, I would say, misnomers, misconceptions, right, with your money, right? Because in the field I am, right, everyone always thinks that you got to be making a ton of money to start, budgeting, right? And and I always tell folks, when I speak to people, I call it the B word because everyone is so afraid of it, right?
Yes.
Right. It's like, budget, like, they clutch their pearls, like, oh wait, what? What did you just say to me and my wife?
Me. Yes.
So, what are some things or some tools that you use to help people flip their perception of those words, right? Like, for instance, like for myself, I like to use active words like spending plan.
Yeah.
If you have a spending plan, that's fun. Where are we going to put our dollars, right?
Yes.
But like, what are some other misconceptions that you've encountered or that you see all the time that you've helped folks kind of switch their point of view on?
Yeah, I think with the budget, I'll talk about the budget and also my concept about debt. with the budget, I just talk about, let's find out what money's going out and what money's coming in. Like, like I just am really frank about it. And then we kind of look at it and we're like, okay, is this your priority? Is this the way you want to do it? Because if it balances, great. If the scales are up or down on either side, you either need more money or you need less going out. Like you can't argue with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can call it a spending plan, you can call it a budget, you can call it whatever you want, but that's the process that we're really doing. Like what's going out and what's coming in, so I have this way of just being frank about things that resonates with people. But I think the biggest thing that people are like, I don't believe you cannot convince me this, and then they're like, oh, I think debt is a blessing. I think that debt is a blessing on so many levels. When I think about that $310,000, it saved my life. I had the means to incur that debt. It is a blessing. You think about your student loans. Even if you're like, oh my God, this is never going to go away. Did you meet anybody during that time in school? Did you learn something? Did you have an experience? That $7,000 credit card bill that is your clothes in your closet. Did you feel good in that dress? It's a blessing that we had the opportunity to incur this debt and show it the respect that it deserves. And let's figure out a way to lessen it, to get rid of it, a plan. And at first people are like, that's bull, when, like, I can't. And then they're like, oh wow, I remember this. I don't look at that credit card in the same way, or I can let this go now and stop this habit because it really wasn't that great, and so I can prioritize in a different way. So that's another thing that I think is really helpful for the people that I work with, just finding ways to think about things in a different way. And I am not the, latte, like, don't have your latte. And if you would just put $5 away, I think if you do put $5 away, if that's all you have, that's a great thing, but not at the expense of something that gives you pleasure. So if that latte helps you to get out the door with a pep on your step, then have that latte. But I bet we can find something that is not giving you so much joy that you have put your money in, and you could take that and put it towards something else. That's what I'm all about. Let's find the real joy and the real not so joy so that you can do something different.
By the way, sorry, Jacky P, I just wanted to say to the listeners that you should have seen the look on Jacky P's face when he heard $7,000 credit card bill. I've never seen him get nervous, but that may have been the first time.
He was like, uh-oh.
Yeah. You're absolutely correct, because he took me out and I you had me in the beginning. I was like, where's Wendy going with this? But you are absolutely correct. And it's funny you said that about the latte, because one thing I do with a lot of my clients is the spending plan, right? I'm not going to use the B word because I promise everyone I don't use the B word, but they're like, I love this coffee shop I go to. I love, like this thing. I was like, okay, like, I'm not telling you not to do that.
Yeah.
But this $5 a day you spend or whatever needs to come out of something. So let's cut down something else that you don't need, that you don't use, right?
Yes.
And when you know that, hey, I'm like, for myself, I'm a cord cutter. I don't have any cable or anything. I just have internet.
Right.
But like, I did that because I am that guy. Like, there's a local shop. I know the owner. It's like, I visit him all the time during the pandemic. So it's like, I go there because I like the guy. And I know like I'm supporting a local human being who has, like, I'm not sending it to, I'm not going to talk about the cable company here because everyone knows of my long feud with them, but
yes. I cut my cable too. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's really about finding, if you are happy about where you're spending your money,
yes,
it becomes a positive feeling, right? That plan, when you say, okay, I've got X amount coming in, What's going to bring me joy, and you can choose where it goes. You don't really feel like you're losing or you're going without. You're just adding to what you love.
I absolutely agree. And that perfect example about that local store owner, like I study body language also. And so the listeners, I can see him, he was dancing, talking about going to this place. Like and I have goosebumps, because I can feel the energy. Like that's what we're trying to get to. That, not like, oh God, I got to go to this store and wait on the line and get this because I've been doing it for the last 6 years. No. Find something that makes you dance and go there. But you're right. It has to come out of someplace else. So think about that magazine subscription or cable or whatever doesn't give you that much delight and joy to make you dance. Take that money and put it someplace else so that you can have more of those experiences. That's what I'm talking about. So that was a perfect example.
What's going on, Maximal Beings? Doc Mock here. If you haven't done so already, leave us a comment and hit the subscribe button. Let your friends and family know. That way we can get the word out and continue to bash the bro science.